Have you ever felt something deep in your body that you just knew but couldn't explain? Maybe it was a quiet nudge, a gut feeling, a whisper, and it's probably something you brushed off, ignored, or maybe just didn't listen to closely enough, only to later realize that was your intuition and it was right. In today's video, we're diving deep into what intuition actually is, how to recognize it, and how to begin trusting it again, especially if you've been taught to override it and ignore it. I'm Jamie Roth, intuitive healer and guide for over 2 decades. I've helped women reconnect with their inner knowing and reclaim the truth they've always carried. By the end of this video, you'll even experience a simple intuitive activation that you can return to anytime. So intuition isn't as mystical as people think or even reserved for psychics. It is your natural birthright. It's the body's language of truth. It is the sixth sense. It's a knowing that bypasses logic, not because it's irrational, but because it's deeper than reason. So to me, intuition is felt or heard. It's like a resonance. Sometimes it shows up as goosebumps. Sometimes it's the absence of tension, which I think is important to point out because a lot of people think there's going to be a big aha with intuition. But often it can be where there's a relaxed feeling, a release of tension, a calmness. So like your body exhales in relief before you've even made the choice. I also have what's known as clairaudience, which means clear hearing. And so there's always a running dialogue in my head. It's different from me just talking to myself or talking to other people in my head, which I also do. It's an inner voice that is my own, but also different from my own. And it does guide me in an audible manner. This can also come through songs, repeat sayings in my head, and different tones, but I'll get into more about that a little bit later. So the thing is that you already have this too, this thing called intuition. You've had it your whole life. However, you might have been trained to override it. So let's talk about that for a second. Why do so many of us not trust our intuition or even recognize it? So perhaps you were raised in a household that was very religious, or society told you don't be dramatic. In this day and age, in our human collective consciousness, we very much value logic over feeling, over physical sensations, emotional sensations, physical sensations, and definitely over intuition. So we're told to be logical, we're told to prove it, don't trust your feelings, facts, 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 facts are the most important, science, 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 science is the most important. If you're speaking to anything outside of that, then it's nothing, it's null and void, it's not accurate. So to know things in advance is considered prophecy, and only a very select few people have that, special people, right? So this might be another reason you avoid intuition, because you've been told that if you're using your intuition, that is wrong or evil or of the devil, because again, only a very select, special few people have God's voice within them to proselytize. So you may have learned that your intuition was wrong or even dangerous. That's very, very common. I hear that a lot. And if you've experienced trauma or control, you may have disconnected from your body altogether just to stay safe. And in our body, in our heart, in our emotions is where intuition resides. So if you have had to disassociate to remain safe, you might have just also turned down the volume or turned off the intuition because it wasn't serving to keep you safe anyways. So for example, sometimes we knew things, but then people did the opposite of what we knew to be true or correct, and it just became more confusing, and therefore you stopped trusting it. So there's many reasons why people don't have awareness of their intuition or understand how to hear it, and definitely don't trust it. But here's the truth. Your body didn't stop speaking. It's just waiting for you to listen again. I consider it like a volume button, and it's either been turned off or muted or volume down, but you can turn it on and turn it back up. So how does intuition actually speak? It shows up differently. For example, it might be a physical sensation like a shiver, a tightening in your stomach, or even a loosening like I talked about earlier, sort of a relaxation, a peaceful feeling. It can be an energetic sensation like magnetism towards something or repulsion away from something. It can be a sense of peace and clarity. Also, there are what is known as the clairs, and they are different versions of how you can receive that intuitive input. As mentioned previously, for me, I'm strongly in clairaudience, which means clear hearing. This comes in the forms of sounds, songs, tones. There's also claircognizance, which means knowing that you know something without knowing why or how you know something. So for example, your phone pings to let you know you have a notification, and before you even pick it up, you know exactly who the text is from. Or on sort of a bigger, grander scale, let's say your partner's walking out the door to go to work. They always stop at the same gas station to get a coffee or something every day. And before they leave, there's just something gnawing at you. And you just say, I don't know why, but I have the weirdest sensation. Please don't stop at the gas station today. And your partner loves you and trusts you. So they say, well, that's weird, but okay. And you felt totally crazy saying it, but you said it and they heeded your message. And it turns out that there was like a robbery or something at the gas station this morning that you found out later on the news, and your partner was able to avoid that. I've heard that from many clients who don't believe they have intuition or don't trust their intuition. And they'll tell me this really wild story about a very strong sense of intuition that came through just like that, like a warning that they had to give someone. They didn't want to because it felt weird and crazy and scary and whatever, but they did it, and it turned out to be completely accurate. So there's also clairsentience, which means clear feeling, and that comes in the form of physical sensations and emotions. So like chills or goosebumps, sudden bursts of anxiety when you're feeling very calm and stable and it doesn't match your experience. So for example, I'm strongly clairsentient. That's one of my strongest intuitive gifts. And so I will feel it in my body. You know, I will, let's say I'm sitting around and all of a sudden, and I'm calm and peaceful. Everything in my world is going really well. In that moment, there's just peace and clarity in my own life, but all of a sudden I'll get this burst of anxiety, just really intense anxiousness. And I'll check in with myself, like, what is that? What's going on? Only to realize that's not mine. I'm feeling something for someone else. Or as an intuitive healer, I sit with clients day in and day out, whether that's virtually or in person. And of course, intuition can cross the energy waves or the light waves or sound and or time and space. That's what I'm trying to say. So it doesn't matter if I'm virtual or in person. But when someone is talking, I can feel what has happened to them, what is going on with them. It's one of the reasons I'm such a good intuitive counselor, because I don't have to regurgitate people's trauma with them, or rather they don't have to regurgitate it to me in order to have me help them. You know, in therapy, a lot of times you have to sit there and talk for many, many, many sessions to get to like the heart of the matter, the root of the matter, and start to do some healing work. But with me, we get to just jump into it because I can feel it in my body and know what that experience was like for you. And so we can sort of get to the heart root of the matter a lot more easily in that regard. There is also what's known as clairvoyance, which is clear seeing, which is often a visual representation for your intuition, whether it's like a mind movie, a snapshot of pictures, symbols. People who have strong clairvoyance tend to have a lot of visual experiences when they meditate. You can see auras, colors, things like that. And this one also tend to be known in being able to predict the future. So these are the most common ways to receive intuitive input. Now, a common question that I get is, how do I know if it's intuition versus fear, which is an excellent question. So fear is very loud. It tells you all the ruminating stories you're used to about how you're wrong, you can't be trusted, you're sinful, unworthy. Intuition can also be loud, but it can also be quiet and soft because it's truth. It doesn't necessarily have to scream at you, but it can. I've seen a lot of advice about intuition over the years, and I always hear like intuition doesn't come with anxiety. or doesn't feel anxious, and it doesn't yell at you. And mine definitely yells at me. Like it absolutely does. And sometimes I do have anxious feelings with mine. Um, but typically it's associated with sort of a calmness and a peace. So, admittedly, when you're not used to using it and trusting it, that softness and clarity can feel confusing until you sort that out within your spirit. Meaning, with practice, you can become accustomed to listening for that clarity and the trusting of peace and knowing that that's intuition. When we're used to chaos and fear and shame and embarrassment, intuition can feel unsettling and scary. But once we get used to listening to it, you will recognize it more from a peaceful place. Other differences are that fear rushes. Fear is like, oh my gosh, we have to do this right now or the world's going to end. But intuition waits. Intuition's even okay with you making a choice not to do the thing it's encouraging you to do. It's not going to yell at you. You're not going to get in trouble with it. There's no imposter syndrome with intuition and things like that. So fear screams what could go wrong, but intuition simply offers a direction. It just says, this is probably a best way or a good way, or maybe you want to try this way. And also sometimes it does go this way, this way, this way, this way, not this way, this way. And the more you practice, the louder your intuition becomes. So I do want to clarify one example that I have of intuition causing me some anxiety. Um, this is where I do struggle to try to make it very clear what's different between like fear and anxiety versus intuition. But I will say in general, when I have an intuitive sensation, like I said, I'm either hearing it clairaudiently, like I'm literally feel like I'm being told what to do, things like that, or I'm feeling a sensation in my body. So an example is one time I was driving to an appointment. And as I started driving, I started getting this sort of anxious feeling in my stomach. And it felt like just this sort of uh-oh kind of feeling. And I'm obviously very well versed at using my intuition. So as I'm driving, I'm like, okay, I have choices here. Do I pull over and check everything's all right with my car? Do I stop and check my schedule to make sure I'm going to the right place, the right time, or what? But because it was just sort of like a gentle nudge of anxiety, it didn't feel like, oh my God, something bad's really about to happen. It was more just like, hello, hello, hello. But it does, for me, it does kind of come in my stomach as an anxious feeling when I might be veering the wrong direction or what have you. And because it wasn't strong enough and because I'm used to my intuition and I didn't feel scared by it, I just went on to my appointment. Well, when I pulled up to my appointment, that's when I stopped and decided to check my schedule, only to find out I was an hour early. So I did have a little bit of anxiety with it, but it wasn't this like, oh my God, everything's going to be terrible, I'm going to die. It was just more a way to get my attention instead of being like, hey, sweetie, how are you? You're going to get there early. I needed more of that nudge that was like, hello, hello, check your schedule. And I chose to ignore it and everything, it was fine. I sat in my car for an hour, no big deal. So how can you start to hone in and practice on your intuition? So one way is to do that check-in with that story I just described. When you get a nudge, when you get a sensation, you want to pause and check in with your body and say, where is this in my body? And you want to do so with just curiosity, without judgment. Where is this? Am I accustomed to this sensation? Could it possibly be telling me something? Do I need more from it? And kind of allow more answers to come up, whether that's audibly, visually, in your body. Another way to do it would be to do some journaling and ask yourself, if I knew the answer, what would it be? And just let yourself write without editing. That's a quick way to just kind of like do that. You can even type in your phone, you could voice message in your phone, things like that, voice text, voice memo. Also use your body as a compass. So as a strongly clairsentient person, I always ask my body, does this feel like expansion or contraction? A big way I use this if I'm going on trips, for example, I need to be able to feel having that experience before I schedule a trip, literally like a vacation, a work trip, anything. Like I will pause and ask my body physically and emotionally, do I sense myself in that space And is it a positive experience that I want? And do I want to be there? And if I can't really feel myself in that space, then I don't schedule that and I don't go. If you are interested in more guided support, I do have some blog postings on my website, and it covers the 4 clairs. There's 4 different postings about the 4 clairs to give you a little more insight and how to use those. I'll link that below. And also I have developing intuition workshops. Sometimes they're in person, sometimes they're virtual, so keep an eye out for those. So to end this, I want to start with a short activation. This is going to take less than 2 minutes. Okay. So I want you to close your eyes. I want you to place one hand on your heart, one hand on your abdomen. And I want you to get that connected breath, which means there's no break between the inhale and the exhale. And we put our hands on ourselves to draw ourselves into our feelings, into our body, into our emotions. Pull ourselves out of the mental space, drop into the heart where your intuition resides. Now recall a moment, any moment, where you knew something before it made sense, where you trusted yourself and you were right with your breath, that continuous breath. I want you to feel that memory in your body and anchor into it. That time that you just knew you were right. You got this nudge, you got the sensation in your body, you heard something, you saw it in your mind. So just pause and listen. You're just pulling up a remembrance right now of a time where you listened to your intuition, where you heard it clearly. And you're just reminding the cells within you that you have the sixth sense. It is natural to you. You were born with it. And you're just taking a moment to unmute it and to just turn up the volume slightly. And the way to do this is to start to recall times where you've had that experience, where you listened or where you heard, where you felt it, or you saw it, or you just knew it. And it may not come with a memory that is positive, because one thing I get is a lot of people who share that they're afraid of their intuition because they have it, but it always seems to be for scary things. So right now, I just want you to explore that there have been times or a time where you did know something without necessarily knowing how you knew. Don't focus on necessarily, why it happened or what it was about, but just that remembrance that you know. And let's just gently turn that volume up. So gently open your eyes when you're ready. So just a few reminders. You don't need to find your intuition. You just need to volume up. You need to remember how to listen to it. If this video resonated, please give it a like, hit subscribe, and share it with someone who's on their own path of coming home to themselves through their intuition. And in the comments, I'd love to hear, when was a time your intuition surprised you or maybe even saved you? Again, if you want to go deeper, check out the links below. I've got some guided courses, free practices. Don't forget I have an oracle deck, which is an extension of intuitive practice, and it can help you on your intuitive journey. Please remember, you are already wise, you are already connected, you are already whole. Thank you for being here with me. Until next time, trust yourself. You know more than you think.